Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Somya, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Great to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I'm excited.
So we met a long time ago, and then we recently met again at the Legal Geek conference about 2 weeks ago in Chicago. Lawline was doing the CLE track there, and you are based in Chicago at Mitratech, right? Mitratech.
Yep.
And so you came by. First off, how was the event for you? This is Lawyers Who Learn. So this is about how you learn in your career. You're the Associate General Counsel at Mitratech. Were you able to learn anything new at that conference?
Yeah, it's a conference that I have loved to follow since it started in London, and then they brought it to the US when I had a startup myself, Ask Me, which is how you and I met a long time ago. I spoke at the London conference at Legal Geek, and I felt like it was just such a like an incubator for amazing ideas, and it was so novel, the things that we were hearing back in, that was 2017. And then I hadn't had a chance to go to some of the Legal Geek conferences in between, so this one was like, after several years kind of getting back into that particular space, and I found it really refreshing. I found that I did learn a lot of new companies, obviously, that are trying to tackle different parts of the legal issues. So I felt like it was really good to get myself back in there and see that there's a lot of innovation going on. There's also a lot of overlap, I would say. But I think even since I joined legal tech a long time ago, the market is always going to have competitors and a little bit of that oversaturation. But it was really great. I enjoyed it.
So before we started on the air, you said to me you already did 2 virtual panels today, which is virtual, I assume, correct?
Yeah,
which is super cool. And now you're doing a podcast, and I saw you speak a lot. I'm going to just quickly go through your timeline of career just to help, so you don't have to go through that. But
yeah,
I don't know if I remember this until I looked at this, but we both overlapped both at GW and New York Law School. What year did you graduate New York Law School again?
2013.
Okay. So I did in 2006. So I'm going to go backwards, actually. So you've been working at Mitratech since 2021, right? Is that correct? 2022. You're also
22.
an adjunct professor at Lewis and Clark Law School, which is super cool. You founded the South Asian Bar Association in Oregon when you were back there. Now you're in Chicago. And then for a long time, you were doing corporate litigation. And yes, before that, and when we met, essentially from 2012 to I think about 2021, you started a company called ESQ or ESQ.me, just to be clear what that is. And so throughout this, you've been on the legal tech side. Now you're in the corporate counsel side. You've been in everywhere, and you speak a lot. Anything, before I get into the questions, anything I missed that it's worth noting on your timeline? I know we didn't go all the way back to 2009 when you were in ESCO and things like that, but anything really worth sharing?
I think with the journey with Ask Me, and private practice being in tandem, I started a law firm of my own for a little bit, and that's how I got myself moving over to Oregon from New York. Because at that time I was able to work virtually. I was using some of the tools that were available then, and I was pushing the billable hour structure, and I didn't have that. And in fact, I was pushing a flat fee. So that was like, I think.
What year was that?
That was like 2016 to 2019-ish, 2020. That was the years in which I was focusing on there. So my remote life was earlier than the pandemic time. And even I didn't really enjoy the billable structure. So I wanted to give clients, especially those in the startup world who did not have the capacity to hire big law firms for their legal needs, or any legal needs. Sometimes they would just be getting documents from the internet and they're like, yeah, those are our bylaws, or those are whatever they need. And I felt like, having been in that situation as a founder, I was lucky enough to be the lawyer as well, so I could empower myself from the legal side. But there were so many other founders I would meet, and they just did not prioritize legal because it was so expensive, and they didn't understand the ramifications of not having legal in the early stages of your startup. So I started I started my law firm, Kashic Law, and I made a prepackaged startup package where it was like you got everything from incorporating your company and getting operating agreements or bylaws or whatever it was, all the way to the financing stages. So that was a piece that was really born out of being in the legal tech and startup world.
Well, I love that. And I don't know if you saw at Legal Geek, Matthew Kurbis was one of our presenters who's a subscription attorney.
Yeah.
And he's done a really great job of that. And like you came from a product space and you wanted to build a product. You don't want to build a service. Since you speak a lot and you have so much diverse experience in every different area, I want to start with this question. What is something that you wish you talked about, people asked you about more when it comes to your career path, or your learning growth journey that you don't get to talk about as much? Because you always talk about now maybe AI and integration and what's happening. You talk about SME and what happened there. And then you talked about the firm, but is there something that like, oh man, if I could talk about this more, it would really be impactful?
Yeah, I think I've never been asked this question, but there's another side of me outside of my professional world that is rooted in meditation and yoga and self-empowerment and learning. And so I love being on this podcast because learning to me is not just, can I learn the law? Can I learn like the EU AI Act now? Yes, that is a very important part of my job, but I really feel like the other part of my life is makes me successful in my professional part of my life. So I'd say that's the foundation that I don't ever get to talk about and I don't get asked about because it's not an obvious thing. I get that. But some of the things I like to talk about are how do you lead yourself so that you can lead others? Like, how do you master yourself and learn yourself so that you know what opportunities are good for you in your professional life? And many of us want to change careers, but it's hard for us to choose that because there's the fear of uncertainty and there's the fear of failure. And there are all these fears that when you do some of the self work, you realize, where do those fears come from? Why do we have them? How can we manage them? And then be able to take those risks in your professional life. So my
Well,
career path is a little different. It's not a traditional one from most lawyers. And so I think that other part of my life is not asked about a lot. And I'm very passionate about that, actually.
that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
You mentioned yoga, self-empowerment, and learning. You said, is that what was the three?
Yeah, meditation and yoga. And it's rooted in my culture. It's rooted in my family history that we don't feel that the inner and the outer worlds are two separate things, but harmoniously try to make them work together.
I would love to start with meditation because I've had an on again, off again relationship with it. And I've gone as far as working with a coach that not only helped me in meditation, she helped me do something called EMDR, which is something where it helps you go deeper into your mindset and understand where your beliefs are coming from. And can you tell me how is that? You said it's a cultural thing. How long have you been doing that? Take us through how you've learned and how you use that in your life, and if you do it daily, or what kind of meditations you do, where you find it. There's just so much to go deep there, and people have constantly said, and so I keep going back to it. It's like a reboot for yourself, and I'm curious. I would love to understand that.
Yeah. So I mentioned that it's in my culture, and my family has been, I would say, meditation practitioners all of their adult lives. And then I grew up in a family that really emphasized understanding yourself before going out and having the world tell you who you are. And to me, that's a very important thing, especially in a career that's got high pressure. It's got lots of titles and demands and these things that you can get really wrapped up in very quickly. And so I grew up around the concept and I saw my parents doing their daily meditation practice. And they really stressed it about focusing the mind, making sure you methodically understand yourself. And so it started off as like a concept rooted in some books and learnings and some things that my parents had passed down to me and my grandparents. And then when I was young adult-ish, I was very interested in it. I felt like it was time for me to really learn it. And so I read all types of, like, there is not a one path for me. It was more like I read a lot of like the Eastern philosophy. I read about Buddhism. I read about different types of religions and just spirituality. I just dove right into it. So I read a lot of books, some self-help books that I love. And my husband will joke and say, like, this is your like full-time job on the side, is like learning about this stuff. So I never stop learning in this area because I think, one, there's just so much information and it's hard to gather it all. But two, the more perspectives I get, some perspectives will really mesh with me and some of them won't. So I'm constantly reading, constantly learning. I like to do as many online courses and retreats. And I don't have one.
What do you do for it right now?
Yeah, so my right now I have young kids and life is a little chaotic if anyone knows what life is with two toddlers and a dog and so I try and get in as much as I can, but I really try and wake up early in the morning and have a little bit of quiet time to myself before the rest of the house gets up. And my practice is really, it's foundational. It's nothing really big, but there's some breathing exercises that I do. There is a little bit of some
You listen to anything?
Sometimes I'll listen to music, but sometimes I don't. It's really every day looks a little different. And I don't like to structure myself into like, I have to do this every single day the exact same way. Because I think we're changing all the time and how you want to approach it every day could be slightly different.
Well, what in terms of listening, usually like somebody actually giving you instructions like, okay, breathe in through your nose and do this. Now think about, feel your body. Now go down, feel what your heart feels, like your lungs. You don't have somebody actually guiding you through the meditation.
Not at this time in my practice, but I've used those before. Yeah, those are things that really help me solidify a routine. But then once I realize what works for me, what doesn't work for me, now I have my own and I can go through that for myself. So I will do sort of like a body scan, just like making sure physically I'm feeling energized, I'm feeling calm within my own nervous system and body. Then I'm connecting myself with the breath and making sure that I've got a conscious awareness of my breath. So much of our day, we don't realize that we're even breathing, right? And sometimes you'll catch yourself like texting or sending an email and you won't even realize maybe you're holding your breath while you do that. Or so it's really a reset in terms of bringing myself back to the breath awareness and connecting myself with my physical body first.
And you work remotely?
I do. Yeah.
So that's even, sometimes you can, you get so focused on the day to day that you don't even take a pause. I actually did an interview with Rebecca Green, who's an amazing, she does wellness in the legal space. And before we started, she's like, can we do something first? I'm like, sure. And she had us do the box breathing exercise. You breathe in through your nose, hold for 4 seconds, then breathe out, hold for 4 seconds, and do every 4 seconds twice. And at first I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And I did it. And afterwards, I was just so in the right place. And so for me, that was just a good awakening that a 3-minute exercise of breathing in sometimes is enough to get your mind in the right area.
Yeah.
And the other area when I started doing it, it's when I really was doing it every day and really going through it, I realized sometimes it took me at least, because I was like, okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes. But then I was like doing it for a half hour at a time. And I realized sometimes it took 15 minutes for me to get in the right zone. And then like I was there. I don't know if that's something that's come up with you.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. Like I play tennis and I don't really get into my game until 45 minutes in. I feel like I haven't like
an interview like this, right?
Yeah, like you need a little bit of time to adjust and transition. And I also think that's the same thing with meditating. You go from constant input. Like we're in an era of constantly having input. We don't have a lot of output in comparison to the input. And we don't have enough time to equalize the input and output. And we even work, we go from back to back. Like I just said, I did 2 panels before this, but I really need to protect my time. But we know that as professionals, we also need to protect our energy. And not everything that's going to take a lot of time requires a lot of energy, and there sometimes can be inversely proportionate. So it's also about understanding your own capacity and how you need to get into something. So for me, I don't like having meetings back to back. I'm sure no one does, because at the end you feel drained and you wonder how to replenish that.
So you don't like doing meetings back to back because you don't have that time to reset.
Yeah.
Do you have any, I actually went to an event recently and Deepak Chopra was there and he had us do a group meditation exercise. It was like 17 minutes. And I was like, you know what? I think this is going to be special. So I hit record on my phone, and it really was. And I listened to it. I have a thing whenever because this one was like literally, he wanted you to picture, he just went through all these different exercises from your breathing to your life to doing different, going backwards and just seeing your life as it evolves over time. And so whenever I travel and I go to the airport, it's a 45-minute ride to LaGuardia, usually in traffic.
Yeah.
The last 25 minutes, I put this on and I listen to it. And it's been like his voice is now ingrained in me, like every time I travel. And it helped because it's so stressful, that ride to the airport, traffic and this. And you feel yourself moving around in the car, but you're like in this zone. Is there any go-to person or voice or 5-minute thing that you go to, that you could maybe like the box breathing that you could share with us that you've learned over the years to help other attorneys? As we all know, stress and anxiety and even mental health, substance abuse, and suicide is higher in the legal profession than other areas because of all that evolved. So I love this conversation. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yep.
And sometimes we don't have time. So is something you could recommend that you do for others?
Yeah, I'll say Deepak Chopra is someone that I have loved all of the material that he shares, and I'm glad that he has been sharing for so many years and decades. I love his books. His retreats are great. I'm so glad you got to go. That's definitely somewhere, if someone's looking where to start, I would say definitely tap into Deepak Chopra's plethora of information. There's something for everybody. And it's relatively agnostic. All of this is like a human experience, I'd say. It's not really a particular religion or anything like that. And that's kind of why I like it, because to me, it's a very human thing. We're all humans and we're all going through a very similar experience, actually, even though the news and world can show that there's so many differences. I like to say, like, we're actually very connected. We're all just human beings, and everything else is on top, kind of layering us in different areas and things, which are important to some degree. But I like to revisit, again, like revisiting my day in the morning. I like to revisit the fact in the end, I'm a human being and I need to tend to every part of myself, not just my professional self or motherhood, but to be good at both of those, I really need to be good inside. And in order to do that, I will tap into some exercises, and some exercises are breathing. The breathing exercises I like to do similar to the box breathing. I like to inhale for as comfortable as you can. So not necessarily 4, but sometimes I'll do 8, and you can stretch it to 20 if you have that capacity, but obviously do it in incremental.
Nose or mouth?
Through the nose. So you'll inhale for a comfortable amount. Let's just say 8. Slowly sort of visualize the breath going from the base of your spine to the top of your spine. And you hold it for the same amount of time comfortably. And then you exhale with your mouth for the same amount of time. And you do that for a couple of times in a row. And you just imagine the energy sort of traveling throughout your body and to make yourself feel lighter. And then before you start that, just realize and kind of be very conscious of the tension in your body. There are many times where I realize like I'm like looking like this when I'm reading an email, or maybe your jaws are clenched, or your shoulders are up, or your feet or your hands are tense. I don't think we realize how much we do that subconsciously throughout the day. And these are moments to just reset and like release tension, lighten it up through the breath, and get back into your body a little bit. And the other thing I like to do is, because I work remotely and I have lots of meetings and speaking events, I'm sitting a lot. And so I know the standing desk thing has become really popular. And unfortunately, I don't have one, but I have a beautiful desk that doesn't move. But I do like to get some movement in. So sometimes in the day, I will just do a little bit of stretching, or I'll do some kind of like somatic movements. And I've really seen a big difference in my overall well-being. I think a lot of us strive for happiness, and that is just such a subjective thing. And for me, it's just striving for well-being, striving for equanimity and evenness. So something happens in my job, there's a potential security incident. I'm a leader in my company and I need to not panic. I need to be able to set myself in grounding and then lead others through a calm experience in maybe a chaotic time.
And I appreciate you bringing up the breathing again, because if my first introduction that breathing can actually have an effect in your body was, I don't know, 20 years ago. I was listening to an audiobook from Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
and he was talking about power of holding your breath. And by doing that, and what he was saying was it helps clean out your lymph system to some degree. I don't really understand why at this moment, but there was something about it where you just need to pause and let your your circulatory rhythm go through that. I also once did a deep breathing meditation, which was so intense that, because you go, it wasn't the Wim Hof thing, but I did that too. But it was similar to that. But we did that for like a half hour. What happened was, I don't know if you've ever done this, my entire body was literally tingling to the point that I thought there was a vibrator on the floor that was vibrating the entire floor. And it freaked me out because even after I stopped breathing, I was tingling. It was almost like hyperventilating. Have you ever had that experience?
Not probably to that extent, but I know that is a thing. And it's important to also do all of this to your capacity and also with someone who knows what they're doing. I recommend starting slow with some of the box breathing and these things. But that's a possibility. I know it's happening.
I was with a professional, but yes, it was definitely.
There's so many different techniques, but I found that I've learned a lot of techniques and they are great. But I also know that they're like tools in a toolbox or clubs in your golf bag, right? Like you use a different club for a different purpose. And you need to know how to do that for yourself. So what works for you may not work for me. And what works for me in this circumstance may not work for me in another circumstance. And so that goes back to understanding yourself. Like, how do you react to uncertainty, to risk? How do you react to working with difficult people? Like where, and understanding yourself, your mind, and your ego. Those are like three things I've learned.
I love that.
The teaching is like, what's really driving you right now? And
do you teach on this subject? Or no?
I don't, but I would love to.
Amazing.
I told you this is like my other.
Oh, this is cool because this is real and this is important. And this is what you can never have enough people teaching and sharing this knowledge because we all need it so much right now. Do you try to, what do they call it? Quiet. I think it's called like in Buddhism, maybe like the monkey brain. Do you ever, like when you're trying to do meditation, do you just let go and know that your mind's going to go wandering, or do you really try to quiet it as much as you can? Because that's the fight a lot of the times where you're just thinking about your day and then you just go back. Where are you in your practice? Like you said, maybe you were at your height 10 years ago and then you have kids or not. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I used to fight it. I used to think like meditation is a place where I'm not supposed to have any thoughts. And I think that is a common misconception. And that's why meditation fails for so many people, because they just don't think they can do it. And they're like, I'm never going to get it. My mind is never going to be quiet. It wasn't quiet today and it's not tomorrow. But the place that I'm at now, and it's taken years to understand and a lot of learning, a lot of reading and listening to others, is actually to understand that to be a witness, mainly to be a witness to your mind. And don't judge it either. A lot of times we have opinions and judgments about the mind. Oh, why did I go there? Why did I think that? Or what? We always want to find the root, especially as lawyers. Like we want to analyze. We are analyzers for a problem. People come to us with a problem and we have to analyze the problem, the law, and we got to give them a solution. So all we want to do with our minds and our thoughts oftentimes, this is a problem. Let me solve it. My kids are young, and if they have a problem, I have to remind myself, I don't need to solve it for them. Like I don't need to solve it for them all the time. I need to listen and witness what they're feeling and what they're telling me. And the same thing I'm doing for someone on the outside, I've got to do for the inside. I've got to be a little kinder to myself and witness the thoughts that are coming and let them go, because they'll go and they may not come back. And if they come back, then just understand that they've come back and figured out why and when they've come back. And understanding those patterns, those mental patterns and habits that you might be doing without knowing.
One of the things that Deepak Chopra says in that meditation, maybe I'll send it to you if you're interested. It's
yeah,
like
please do.
He says, be the awareness of your mind. You're not your mind. You're the awareness of that it's there. And it was like, oh, wow. And then there was a decision. I can't remember, like, you have to make, I'm not going to do it justice, but there's just so much to that. Do you ever hear the term the third eye?
Yeah.
Is that so? In part of meditation is like we're supposed to look out in front of you in the third eye. Is that something that you've done? And can you explain that if so?
Yeah, I want to touch on the monkey mind really
Yeah.
quickly. So one of the other things in my career that will not be on my LinkedIn or my resume is I started when my first son was born, I started a company called the Veda Club. And it's a place where I distill Vedanta philosophy, which is a lot of what we're talking about, rooted in the Indian culture. It's basically to distill a lot of those complex, these are really complex, heavy topics like consciousness and awareness to really modern, simple things for children. And so
Love
I
it.
authored a children's book called You, Yes, You, and it's on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And when my son was born, I was inspired to transfer some of this knowledge in really fun ways. So it follows the journey of an egg. The character is an egg. And so the point is that inside, he goes through the trials and tribulations of life, he goes through all the feelings of fear and maybe doubt, self-doubt, and things like that, and loneliness or heartbreak. So he goes through this journey. And at the end, he realizes that the hard shell around him is cracked because he's either given it pieces to people or it's cracked because of experiences. And in the end, he's just like the golden yolk inside. And so truly that's the consciousness inside that he is, and it's bright and it's shining. And
I
so
love it.
to remember that you are like Yoki, the egg, and we build these layers around us. And meditation, the process of meditation is to go to the yolk and go through the layers and realize who are you really, what's driving you, where do the thoughts patterns come from. And even like in the law, a lot of times I went through this transition in my career when I was leaving litigation in New York City, and I was like, being able to say you're a trial attorney in New York City feels really good. That feels, oh wow, this is like the height of my career, and I'm arguing in the Southern District. And I really loved doing that. And saying I'm a founder and a CEO, like those are all buzzwords that make your ego feel really good. And then when you have to leave it, or maybe you're forced to leave it, or whatever the circumstances of life happen, in my case, I moved on. But I had this period of time where I was like, oh, I miss having that title and that confidence that came with the title. And I had to really reflect and realize, but that's my ego that really loves that. My ego is not confidence. The confidence has to come from inside. So if I have no title, I'm still like, I'm Somya.
First of all, love that. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
It's hard to write a book. It's harder to do a children's book. And I assume you had to have illustration in there.
Yeah.
And finding an illustrator, the amount of time, energy, and cost to get something that you know is not going to make the money back that you put into it. But it's about legacy and it's about putting it out there.
It's about sharing my thoughts. I think that this should be free. This stuff should be free. This is the 101 on how to live authentically.
Look, that's why I start this podcast by asking you what you don't talk about, because I want to talk about what's authentic, not what doesn't give you energy. And then you see where it goes. And it's fun. So let me ask you one last question about meditation, then we'll go on to yoga and then we'll wrap it up. You mentioned some books. I don't know if you have your phone in front of you or a Kindle app on you or Audible. I would love if you could, any titles that you could recommend and you could take a moment to take a look, because I know it's hard to come up on the spot. There was a book that somebody recommended to me. I try to read it. It's supposed to be really good. It's like How to Be Superhuman or something like that. It's a big meditation guy. God, I'll look that up myself. But I was wondering if anything that's been transformative for you.
Yeah, there have been. One of them is a more personal preference. One of them is two of them are. One of them is Living with the Himalayan Masters. And the other one is The Autobiography of a Yogi. I think both of those yoga and meditation masters came to the West, to the US in, I think, very early 50s, 60s, maybe even earlier than that. And those were profound books for me to read, and they piqued my curiosity to another level. And I think then it opened up to more things. The other one I'd say is a more recent one that I really loved, was called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach.
Awesome.
That's been a really great.
That's a meditation book?
Not a meditation book, but it's talking a little bit more about how to like practically use some of these tools we're talking about, like self-acceptance and understanding yourself. And then, I think those are the three that I would
Those are great.
recommend.
My goal is I'm working on it now using AI through all these interviews, so many book recommendations. I'm going to put together a full list by categories. So many great things. So as we go to yoga, and your time is still good right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we go to yoga. I want to share a story if I could. When
Yeah.
it was 2020 and I was living in Spain and COVID happened. And in Spain, there was a lockdown for 52 days where you weren't allowed to leave your apartment at all. And kids couldn't leave. You could only leave to go food shopping or to the doctor. And we had a terrace. And we had it before the US. And my wife was big into yoga. And I started having maybe a little bit of panic attacks, thinking I was getting just everything about it. And I needed to figure something out to get my mind going. So I set this challenge, and I never did yoga before. And I did 100 days straight of yoga with my wife. And every day we had an app and we did it because I'm not flexible at all. And I love the challenge. I love doing it. I love sort of the experience of going through that. And obviously there's a lot of similarities between meditation and yoga. And so I would love to hear I guess it goes back to your childhood as well, but tell us your journey with yoga and where you're at today.
Well, I'll say that the yoga I grew up with goes hand in hand with the journey of self-awareness and self-understanding. It's not really meant to be like a Pilates where we're working on flexibility and maybe weight loss even and stuff like. I know that there's a big trend with yoga and Pilates, but so I grew up understanding that yoga and the asana practice is really important for your meditation journey as well. And a lot of times I think these things are siloed. Like we learn about meditation, then you learn about yoga, then you learn about breathing, and then you learn about maybe the chakras. And someone's into maybe one of them or a couple of them. But I think it's come after reading and practicing a little bit, I've realized that they're all really important and they're all doing similar things. So to me, like you don't have to be flexible to get the perks and values and benefits of yoga, because to me, yoga is movement where the body holds on. They say the body keeps count or the body keeps score. So like disease in the body will show up as the last thing to physically manifest. But before that, there's lots of stress and there's a lot of cortisol, heightened cortisol release. There's nervous system that's stuck in a freeze or a fight and
Inflammation.
Inflammation. There's lots of stuff that you can't.
Are you saying yoga helps with that? Or you're saying yoga helps you figure out if you have that?
So I'm kind of saying that the physical body shows up later, but what really is happening is sometimes asymptomatic. You don't realize that we hold lots of tension and emotions in our muscles, in our joints, and throughout our whole body. So yoga to me is an ability to almost like prophylactically move the energy in your body so it's not holding on to things where disease can create or stress can create or tension can become stagnant. And so yoga is actually the movement of energy throughout your body to clear out that tension.
That was said so well. Like now I'm sold. I'm like, now how, but what is your practice, or what did you do it when you were at your height of it? What do you recommend? Let's start with you. Are you watching an app? Are you doing it in your head? Do you have a 10-minute routine? And
yeah, it's been such a journey. One thing on my bucket list is to do the yoga teacher training, but I'm actually nervous and scared because I'm like, oh, but I can't do a headstand. I'm not like the super flexible instructor that looks great on YouTube and Instagram or whatever. And I have to remind myself that is not the goal, right? That's not the goal. And it's hard not to, because you're just like bombarded with the perfectionist of everything that should look like this. Otherwise, you're not doing it correctly. But I try to go back to the root and remember. So my practice has gone from using an app, going to studios. When I lived in New York, I used to go to the studios all the time. I tried Bikram yoga, the hot yoga. That was not for me. That was a really good workout, but was not for me. And now I think I've realized in this big trajectory, like I come full circle where most of my practice is like very basic. Like it's nothing fancy, but I'm going to stick with it because it seems to be working. I'm sure it'll change at some point in the future, but then I'll have to like recalibrate. And again, that'll have to look a little different. But right now, my practice with even meditation and breathing, they're very simple and they're the basics. And even my yoga practice, it's like the sun salutation, or it's called Surya Namaskar. That is my practice. If I can do maybe 4 rounds of that.
What is that?
It's
What do
a
you do?
series of it's a series of asanas or postures that go from standing tall all the way to almost like a downward dog.
So what is sun salutation?
So yeah, my practice is basic. It's the sun salutation or Surya Namaskar, which is several steps to go in order. It's almost like an entry level. You don't need to be super flexible to get the benefits. And you're starting at a tree pose or standing position. And it goes through all variations of close, like a warrior pose. Then this is why I'm not the teacher trainer. I'm not the trainer yet. But
Why is it called sun salutation?
so it is meant to be done in the morning.
Got it. Okay.
It doesn't have to be. There's no requirement. But in the early teachings, it was to be done in the morning, early morning, as the sun is rising, and the sun gives us energy, and it's a way to energize your whole body through the movement itself. So,
Out of curiosity, because you mentioned they're all different parts to it, do you generally do meditation before or after yoga, or what is recommended?
yeah, I flipped between back and forth, but I
Yeah.
really, because they're interchangeable along with the breathing. When I start, I usually in the morning have one thing I like to do is get things like ready the night before. So a lot of like the breakfast for the kids will be planned or their outfits, 'cause they're still very young. Even my own thing, I have a to-do list for the next day that I do at night to clear that out of my mind. So in the morning, I'm not really scattered to think about these other things. And then I start with yoga because I think once I get into my body, it really brings my mind there, and my mind starts to get focused here instead of those other things like office and kids. And then once I get a little bit of that movement through, I will sit down and I'll do some breathing exercises and start to really bring myself back and my mind centered. And then I'll go through some of the meditation and sort of the visualization that kind of you were talking about with Deepak Chopra.
I really want to get back. I want to do another yoga challenge because that was cool. And I do run. I actually do a 7-minute high intensity workout every day, depending on, because I have an app called Seven, and I have a 7-month challenge, and you just do every day. And so like those little things, I do like chin ups every day, and I run 2 times a week or 3 times, depending on how hot it is. And I do things like that, and I try to meditate, but I don't really that at all. And I don't really do yoga and try to just those things I don't even stretch the way I should. So that's almost the way, like you let those things go and at your own detriment. And I really appreciated that. That's the other thing that has become more aware to me in the past couple of years is how important sleep is. Yeah. And there's a guy that I've read his book called Arte. His name is Brian Johnson. And he has a saying, he thinks of sleep as a sport. You need a minimum of 7 hours. If you want your cells to be healthy, you want to help fight off sickness and cancer. And there's different meditations that I work on or things that I listen to when I wake up 4 a.m. and my mind's racing to try to really go back to sleep. And I used to just be like, okay, I'll just stay up for the day. And I'm working really hard to do that. And every year, as you get older, and I have 3 kids and your life gets busy, everything takes work and energy. So I appreciate that. So we talked about yoga, we talked about meditation. Anything else as we wrap up the one question before I go there, do you ever bring a question to meditation that you want to solve? What do I want to do next? Do I want to write another book? Do I want to start my own meditation practice? Or let's go to law. Like, where does my career look like in 10 years from now, or things like that? Do you try to do that, or that doesn't work for your meditation?
Yeah, I do. I think I've learned to get a little bit out of my own way. I think the mind can get in your own way. And a lot of times our minds are operating out of fear and we don't even know it.
100%. Yeah.
We think it's curiosity or we think it's excitement, but actually it's like latent fear and anxiety.
Fear or laziness, for me at least.
Yeah. And you don't really know what's driving. So that's when I understand what's driving you. What's driving those questions? Is it fear? Is it uncomfortableness that you don't like where you're at? And so I'd say, yeah, I do bring questions to it. I've started to be more, I'm going to feel like And my husband's always like, oh, we won't know until Somya feels it. And it sounds really subjective and it's really hard to quantify. I get it. And, I think a lot of that actually translates to my practice of law, that when I felt the transition needed to be made, it was something I felt. It was not necessarily like I planned it and I like logically knew that in 5 years this is going to happen. Like we all know that's a false perception of control. We really can't control life like that. But what I can do is really like hone in on where I'm at, like well-being and what's feeling right. Like right now, this feels like it's the right place for me. And then I trust that the next step will show up and I'll know. I think a lot of times we feel like we have to make the next step, and we do. We have to put in our own efforts, but at the same time, not knowing which way to go, that's sort of tapping into our like the internal compass and feeling. So I will pose a question and I'll just be open to the answer, and the answer comes usually in a way of feeling or something that shows up and I'm, oh yeah, okay, there we go. Maybe that's it.
I can tell you this, everything you've said, if your parents ever listen to this, they'll be very proud.
Oh, thanks.
Just to know what they've done in their lives have instilled on you all these years later. And that's what we think about. That's why I wrote a book in 2019, partly for the legacy for my kids, to have that. You never know what can happen. You want that to be there. And you don't know the impact that you're having on your kids until they're adults and see what they do. And so everything that we do and how we show up. And so to see where you're at and how you've integrated this into your practice. And maybe you will start doing panels on meditation and yoga and self-help, in addition to all the other panels you go on that are just as important in different in other ways. So I really appreciate you being flexible and seeing where we went with this conversation. And I hope I was right. I think I told you this off air, that you would have more energy at the end than at the beginning. Yes. Is that right?
I do. Cool. Honestly, this was better than any coffee or tea I could have in the afternoon. And I want to give you a lot of credit that you asked a question nobody has asked me in all the years I've been either interviewed or on a panel. So I think that's something to be noted that you have.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think I'm not sure why, but it's just, to me, I want to talk about what gives you energy and what gives me energy. And so far it's worked out every time I've asked it. But I knew what I didn't want to talk about was AI, yes, law, all those different things. I just want to talk about your growth. So thank you for that. And let's continue to grow together. And I know anybody who watches this will get a lot of value.
And I'll share with you a copy of the book. So
yes, please do. Awesome. Thanks, Somya.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.